Picture this. A spoiled, entitled heir waltzing into your home, your sanctuary, brazenly announcing he's taking your wife for a couple of nights. How would you handle that? And, to add insult to injury, he doesn't stop there. He starts hurling threats your way. My first instinct was to plant my fists squarely on his smug face, but I decided to take a different approach. It wasn't like I was in the best mood to begin with. That Thursday afternoon, I had just wrapped up loading tools into my pickup truck after an exhausting day. The client I'd been working with for the past 2 weeks had been infuriatingly indecisive about a custom staircase design. Every time I thought we were on track, he'd demand yet another change. That morning, his latest revision was so extensive, I had to dismantle a good chunk of the work I'd already completed. To make matters worse, the changes meant I'd need to consult both the architect and engineer to redraw the structural plans. Thanks to this, my next day would be unexpectedly free, a mixed blessing. I'm Ethan Walker, a 34-year-old craftsman and owner of a boutique carpentry business specializing in high-end, artistic staircases. My clients are the elite: mansion owners, luxury hotels, upscale restaurants, and corporate offices. Folks willing to shell out $50,000 or more for a custom piece of art. I've been married to Lillian Brooks, a 29-year-old attorney specializing in commercial and intellectual property law, for 4 years. Lillian is sharp, ambitious, and focused on her career, which is part of the reason we haven't started a family yet. She wanted to solidify her position at her firm, Reed Boylan and Hendricks, first. When I got home around 4:30 p.m., I was surprised to find Lillian's car already in the driveway. It was unusual. On Thursdays, she typically worked late to wrap up her week early. Intrigued, I entered the house through the back door, the route I always took after a day at the construction site. Noticing a slight drop in water pressure, I wondered if Lillian might be upstairs using the shower, a rare occurrence since she preferred to shower in the morning or just before bed. After changing into more comfortable clothes, I headed upstairs to see what was going on. Sure enough, Lillian had just finished showering and was getting ready. She wore sultry black fishnet stockings, and a sleek new black dress lay neatly on the bed, awaiting its turn. Her appearance wasn't just polished, it was deliberate. "Hey honey, what's the occasion? Am I forgetting something? Do we have plans tonight?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Her expression threw me off. She looked nervous, though she was clearly trying to hide it. Sighing, she finally spoke. "No, Ethan, you haven't forgotten anything. I'm going out tonight, and you're not. I'll be back Sunday afternoon. I'm spending the weekend with Nathan Reed." "What? What are you talking about? Is this some kind of work trip?" I asked, bewildered. "No," she replied coolly. "It's not for work. Nathan booked a suite for us. I'll see you next week. This weekend is for him." Her words hit like a sucker punch. "You're kidding, right? Lillian, you can't just waltz off with another man for the weekend. What the hell is going on?" Her tone turned icy. "You'd better get used to it, Ethan, because that's how Nathan wants it. And trust me, you don't want to get on his bad side." I stared at her, disbelief coursing through me. "So, let me get this straight. You just going to leave, expecting me to sit here and take it? And then what? Next week, we pretend this never happened?" Her smile was almost mocking. "I never said it was just for this weekend. Nathan mentioned this might happen occasionally. You'll just have to accept it. It'll be easier for you if you do." Anger surged. "Lillian, you'd better think this through. If you think I'm going to let some smug prick run my life and treat me like a doormat, you're in for a rude awakening." She ignored me, focused on finishing her preparations. I stormed downstairs, grabbed a beer, and tried to steady my nerves. Moments later, a Mercedes pulled up in front of the house, and out stepped the man of the hour, Nathan Reed. This wasn't my first run-in with Nathan. I'd met him at one of CBH's Christmas parties a few years ago. He was the quintessential power player, mid-40s, sharp-dressed, and dripping with arrogance. He oozed charm with the women while treating their husbands and male co-workers like insignificant nuisances. I couldn't stand a guy from the moment I laid eyes on him. Lillian came down the stairs, visibly annoyed, and opened the door. "Sorry for the wait, Nathan. My husband seems to have forgotten his manners," she said, her tone sweet but subservient, a stark contrast to how she usually spoke to me. She muttered something else, too quiet for me to hear, as they both stepped inside. Nathan didn't waste any time. "Hey, Dusty boy, I hear you got a problem with Lillian spending the weekend with me," he barked, swaggering into my living room like he owned the place. My blood boiled. "Listen, asshole, you got about 5 seconds to get out of my house before I call the cops." I shot back, fists clenched. He laughed, a deep, mocking laugh, and glanced at Lillian, who smirked. "Call the cops? Sure. Let's see what they do." Spoiler alert. "Nothing," he sneered. "Wait a minute. Are you recording me?" he added, noticing the phone in my shirt pocket. Before I could respond, he snatched the phone, saw it was password locked, and hurled it onto the floor. The ceramic tiles won the battle, shattering the screen. "Listen closely, you little nobody. Your wife is spending the weekend with me. Whether you like it or not, she will be with me whenever I please. And let me make one thing abundantly clear. Your opinions in this matter are utterly irrelevant. Do you understand? If you dare to interfere, the repercussions will be severe. Your life, already bleak, will become an unbearable nightmare compared to what I'm capable of unleashing. So, do yourself a favor and remain silent this weekend. Don't stir up any trouble. If I catch even a whisper of you upsetting Lillian, threatening her with divorce, or engaging in any foolish antics, like attempting to contact my wife, you'll regret it. Everyone will learn about your little escapades with money laundering or the unspeakable materials on your computer. Yes, I know all about it. I chose to let it slide. Feigning ignorance, if you will. But it's a precarious situation, isn't it? Of course, I've never engaged in money laundering, nor have I ever been involved with anything so vile as illegal content. My reply was mechanical, an effort to appear unaffected. "That's easily arranged," I muttered. Uploading material to someone's computer isn't exactly rocket science. A few clicks, and anyone's reputation could be obliterated. But I didn't stop there. Playing the innocent fool, I asked, "If those materials are illegal, wouldn't you be incriminating yourself by uploading them? Surely, having them in your possession is already a crime." My tone was light, almost curious, as if I were discussing a mundane topic. He smirked, his expression dripping with arrogance. "That's the difference between you and me," he said smugly. "What's illegal for someone like you is perfectly acceptable for people like me, those with influence, power, and the right connections. So, my advice? Stick to your quaint, working-class values and leave the business of the elite to those who know how to play the game. Are we clear?" I could scarcely process the words coming out of his mouth. It sounded so absurd, like dialogue from a bad comedy film. Yet the man in my living room was deadly serious. Before leaving, he added one more thing, as if to twist the knife. "Oh, and don't think about retaliating against me or Lillian. That includes seeking comfort in someone else's arms. I wouldn't want you catching something and passing it along to Lillian, and by extension, to me. Understood? I won't ask Lillian to deny you closeness, for now. See? I'm being quite reasonable." With that, he turned on his heel and gestured to Lillian, who grabbed her overnight bag. She left without so much as a glance in my direction. No goodbye, no acknowledgement. The word honey rolled off his tongue as he addressed her, a term of endearment that stung like acid. The surreal nature of the situation left me frozen. Not just angry, but utterly astounded. My emotions were a chaotic blend of fury and disbelief. As I stood there, seething, I silently thanked the burglar who had broken into my house the year before I met Lillian. That incident had compelled me to install a comprehensive surveillance system, motion-activated cameras, and voice-recording microphones, all synced to a secure cloud. I never disclosed to Lillian that the system could be activated even when we were home, ensuring she remained unaware. Before she opened the door for that detestable man, I turned it on. At the same time, I began recording on my cell phone, a deliberate decoy. I hoped Reed would notice the phone, assume he'd disabled the only recording device, and lower his guard. The tactic worked better than I'd hoped. The cell phone, now shattered on the floor, had fulfilled its purpose. Fortunately, it wasn't my personal device, but my business phone, a habit I'd adopted after learning that wealthier clients expect you to be on call 24/7. A separate business phone allowed me to maintain boundaries, turning it off at night and addressing messages in the morning. Picking up my personal phone, I immediately called Victor Hayes, my business lawyer and trusted confidant. Victor wasn't just my attorney. He was family. He had married my older sister Abigail 10 years ago. Their happiness was tragically cut short when Abigail drowned during a vacation in Guadeloupe with her friends. Victor remained close to us even after her passing, and 3 years later, he found love again with Sophia. They married after a year of dating, with my parents, Lillian, and I attending the ceremony. To this day, Victor and Sophia feel like siblings to me. When I explained the threats Reed had made and the events surrounding Lillian's weekend getaway, Victor didn't hesitate. He assured me that he and Sophia would arrive within an hour with dinner. He instructed me to stay indoors, turn off all communication devices, and avoid contacting anyone. His calm, decisive manner gave me a much-needed sense of security. As I waited, I reflected on the past hour. It was painfully clear that Lillian had been drawn to Reed's power and charm, trading our love for his influence. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Our bond was far weaker than I had imagined. I thought back to how it all began, 5 years earlier, at a friend's birthday party. She was a stranger to me then, the sister of the birthday boy's army buddy stationed in Afghanistan. We'd hit it off immediately, our connection blossoming into a week of dating that led to marriage the following year. Back then, I worked for Mr. Harris, a talented woodworker who owned a small business. While Craig Harris excelled in his craft, his accounting and management skills were severely lacking. He hired me part-time while I was in college to handle his bookkeeping. Within months, he secured 3 major contracts, far more than he could handle alone. When he asked for my help in the field, I willingly stepped up. In the beginning, my work mainly revolved around small tasks, running errands, picking up supplies, and assisting with the handling of bulky materials. However, it didn't take long for my quick learning and knack for the job to stand out. Once I got past the initial challenges, I was soon able to handle simpler projects on my own and became an essential part of the team for more complex assignments. Despite earning my accounting degree, I discovered a deep satisfaction in hands-on work, which led me to pursue an apprenticeship. After several years of dedication, I achieved certification and officially became Mr. Harris's associate. When he retired, my parents stepped in with financial backing, enabling me to gradually purchase his share of the business over a 2-year period. While some of the lawyers at CBH sneered at me as a blue-collar shop worker, I didn't let it bother me. My company was thriving, strategically focusing on fewer but more lucrative projects. Recently, I'd even hired 2 assistants, and my net income had surpassed that of many attorneys in my wife's circle. Yet, even Lillian was oblivious to the extent of my success. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Sophia and Victor arrived, carrying bags of Chinese takeout and a 6-pack of beer. "Ethan, are you okay?" Sophia asked, pulling me into a comforting hug. Her genuine concern was palpable. "I can't believe Lillian did this to you." "It's not like her," she added hesitantly. Victor embraced me in turn, his presence steadying. "Don't worry, buddy. We'll figure this out together. Let's eat first, and then I'll take a look at that recording," he assured me. Over dinner, I recounted the humiliating reception I'd received upon arriving home earlier that afternoon. Afterward, I retrieved my laptop and pulled up the files containing both the video and audio recordings. The clarity of the captured conversation was striking. "I can't believe what I just heard," Victor exclaimed, visibly taken aback. "What an arrogant piece of work," I commented dryly. "Arrogant? More like a complete idiot," Victor retorted. "This guy's what, 42? That should mean he has over a decade of legal experience, maybe 15 years. He's not a novice, but his ego blinds him. He's so puffed up with self-importance that it never occurred to him that sometimes keeping your mouth shut is the best option. Your decoy with the phone was brilliant. It completely disarmed him. He let his guard down and gave us exactly what we needed." "That's great," I replied. "But can I even use this?" "I recorded it without his consent." "You're in the clear," Victor said confidently. "This is your home, your private property. You're within your rights to record anything that happens here. So, there's no legal risk?" I pressed. Victor sighed. "Not exactly. Legally, You're on solid ground, but we still need to tread carefully. On the way here, I did some research while Sophia drove. It turns out that Reed isn't just anyone. He's the son of the founder of CBH. You knew this, right? I nodded. What you might not know, Victor continued, is that his father, Albert Reed, built his career more on connections than skill. He wasn't a particularly sharp lawyer, but he had college buddies in all the right places. Most of the local judges were his friends. That network gave him an edge in nearly every case he handled. Now Nathan Reed, his son, is following the same playbook. That's what makes him so dangerous. He has influence in the courtroom that could make even the strongest case against him difficult to win. So you're telling me I'm doomed no matter what I do? I asked, feeling the weight of the situation. Not doomed, Victor said firmly, but it's going to be an uphill battle. Fortunately, you've got me and my network on your side. The key is gathering ironclad evidence, and I got a plan. But you just said the judges will side with him. I pointed out. They will, unless we take this to criminal court, Victor explained. That's where we'll aim. Our conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. A petite brunette stood on the porch, holding a small bag. Mr. Walker? She asked politely. Emily. Come on in, Victor called out. Ethan, this is Emily Harper. She's a computer expert at a private investigation firm I often work with. I reached out to her after we spoke earlier. Emily joined us and listened intently as I outlined the threats Reed had made, particularly his intention to plant incriminating material on my computer. When she heard the recording, her expression hardened. Here's the deal, Emily began, her tone professional. We're looking at two possible methods he might use. The first, and more likely, scenario involves him physically accessing your computer. He'd change the timestamps on the files to make it look like they were there before his visit. If that happens, your surveillance system should capture everything. Just make sure the cameras are recording before you leave the house. She pulled a sleek gray device from her bag. The second possibility is remote access. This module will monitor all activity on your network, recording any attempts to upload or download files. To protect yourself, transfer all your personal and sensitive data to an external drive and wipe the computer clean. I'll help you do this to ensure nothing important gets left behind. Her confidence was reassuring, and it was clear she was an expert in her field. Victor chimed in. Let's get started, Ethan. Right now, the only solid evidence we have is the recording. If you try to take legal action based on that alone, the case could be dismissed, especially with Reed's connections. Public opinion tends to downplay blackmail, and his friendly judges might brush it aside. What if he actually goes through with uploading illegal content to your computer? That changes everything. Think about it, he continued. If he reports you for possession of illegal material, we'd have a clear timeline showing it was planted. With the advance warning he gave you, which we've recorded, we'd have an airtight case in criminal court. Even his judicial allies would distance themselves from him. No one wants to be associated with someone tied to exploitation. For the first time all day, I felt a glimmer of hope. If Reed really was foolish enough to try his scheme, we'd be ready. This is both disturbing and sick, I remarked, shaking my head. Yes, but Reed himself is just as twisted, Victor replied grimly. One more thing. Can you avoid using your computer for the next few days? If Reed moves forward with his plan and involves the police, they'll likely inspect the computer to see if anyone accessed the illegal files after the upload. If you don't use it at all, the logs will stay clean, which will work in our favor. Also, ensure that your phone doesn't connect to your home Wi-Fi during this time. He might try to use your phone instead of your computer for his scheme. Emily worked efficiently, installing the surveillance module, while also erasing all sensitive information from both my computer and phone, including important company documents. The module will record and send us copies of any attempts to access your network, she explained. I'll update you both once I have something. Best of luck, gentlemen, she added before leaving. All right, Victor said, turning back to me. Let's deal with the practical stuff now. Do you want to start the divorce proceedings immediately? Or would you prefer to wait and see if there's any chance of working things out when Lillian returns? No, I said firmly. I want the divorce now. There's no point staying married to someone so easily swayed by a self-important egomaniac. I've made my decision. I'm done. Understood, Victor nodded. I'll contact Sylvia Grant first thing tomorrow. She's the best family lawyer in our office. She'll make sure this gets handled efficiently and fairly. Good. I replied, appreciating his proactive approach. Victor reassured me that Sylvia would reach out to me as soon as possible and promised I find her both professional and easy to work with. We discussed a few more details, and I provided him with the access code to my surveillance system for real-time updates and cloud store recordings. By the time Victor and Sophia left, it was past 11 p.m. I took a sleeping pill to calm my nerves and fell asleep within half an hour. The next morning, at 8:30 a.m., Sylvia called. She had already spoken to Victor and was up to speed on my situation. She asked me to come to her office at 11 a.m., and I agreed. During our meeting, Sylvia expressed her sympathies and acknowledged Nathan Reed's reputation. Fortunately, she said, since you purchased the house before you married Lillian and her name isn't on the deed, the property remains yours. With no children involved, she assured me the divorce process would be relatively straightforward. However, I was concerned about my business. Could she force me to sell it and divide the proceeds? I asked anxiously. Sylvia immediately summoned Victor, who quickly joined the meeting. Relax, Ethan, he said. Your marriage contract clearly states the company is solely yours. Lillian has no claim to it. They might try to argue otherwise, but legally, they don't have a leg to stand on. Feeling reassured, I wrapped up the meeting at 12:30 p.m., following Sylvia's instructions on handling the financial aspects of the divorce. She promised Lillian would be served the papers at her office on Monday. After replacing my damaged phone, I spent the rest of the weekend working in the yard and catching up on my favorite TV shows. Although my anger toward Lillian simmered, I found it hard to fully grasp the reality of our crumbling marriage. I anticipated a period of grief eventually, but at that moment, my emotions were too raw. As Sunday evening approached, I debated whether to sleep in the guest room or relegate Lillian to it. Ultimately, I decided it was my house, and since she had walked out on me, I wouldn't share my bed with her. I moved all her belongings into the guest room and installed a lockable doorknob on my bedroom, keeping the key in my pocket. When I heard Reed's car pull into the driveway that evening, I activated the surveillance system. From the living room, I watched as Lillian indulged in a prolonged kiss with Reed before stepping out of the car. She waved as he drove away, then entered the house. Feigning indifference, I remained seated, pretending to read a book. "Hi, honey," she said with forced cheerfulness. "How was your weekend?" Without looking up, I replied flatly, "Fine." Her forced smile faltered. "Oh, great. Continue sulking then. Nathan warned me you'd act like this. So predictable. You lack the intelligence to understand my needs, or the maturity to acknowledge your own failures." She spat, her mask slipping. With that, she stormed upstairs. I began counting. 1, 2, 3. "Ethan Walker, did you put a lock on our bedroom?" she shrieked. "Correction," I called back calmly. "On my bedroom. Your things are in the guest room. That's where you'll stay until you find an apartment." "This is ridiculous. Just wait until Nathan hears about this." "This was a part of the agreement," she shouted. "Agreement? What agreement?" I asked with mock confusion. "I haven't agreed to any of your partner's nonsense. You can stay in the guest room or leave entirely. Maybe Reed's wife has room for you in her marital bed." Lillian glared at me, but said nothing. She stormed into the guest room and slammed the door. I followed her upstairs and through the closed door, called out, "By the way, what was in this so-called agreement for me? Care to explain?" Silence. 15 minutes later, I returned downstairs, my phone buzzing with text messages from an unfamiliar number. "What's this I hear, Cuck? You locked Lillian out of her own room? I thought I made myself clear. Even someone like you should understand. For tonight, I'll overlook your childish tantrum. Tomorrow, you'll cook Lillian's favorite dinner and apologize. If you behave all week, I'll allow her spend time with you next weekend. Fail to comply, and you'll learn just how serious my threats are. No questions. Clear?" I stared at the screen, incredulous. This man was a bizarre mix of heartless, delusional, and idiotic. Without responding, I took a screenshot and sent it to Victor. His reply came 3 minutes later. "Unbelievable. This guy thinks he's untouchable, but he's just a first-rate fool. Keep all the messages intact and don't reply. Let him dig his own grave. Reed sent a few more texts, but I left them unread. Eventually, Reed stopped reaching out. I didn't see Lillian again that evening. I locked my bedroom door, ensured the surveillance system was still recording, and sent a message to one of my assistants, letting him know I'd be coming in late the next day. I waited until I was certain Lillian had left the house in the morning before getting up and preparing for the day. As I made breakfast, I downloaded the previous night's recordings from the surveillance system. Lillian hadn't emerged from the guest room until this morning, using the guest bathroom for a quick shower before leaving the house without eating. Surprisingly, she hadn't tried anything suspicious with my computer, contrary to my expectations. While finishing up my coffee, I received a text from Sylvia Grant. "Hi Ethan, just confirming that the divorce papers will be served at 10:15 this morning. I've informed Victor as well. Try to have as good a day as possible, considering everything." Before heading to my workshop, I double-checked that the surveillance system was active and set to send alerts to my phone if triggered. At 11 a.m., I had a meeting with an architect to finalize modifications for a client project. The busy work helped distract me, though I still anticipated a call from Lillian after she was served. To my surprise, the phone stayed silent. At 10:45, I texted Victor to share my surprise. Lillian hasn't called or messaged. I assume she's already spoken with Reed. They're probably scheming. Victor replied almost immediately. "Definitely possible. I'll get Emily involved. Stay tuned." The meeting went smoothly, which allowed me to focus for a change. I spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning tools and organizing my workshop until, at 3:12 p.m., my phone buzzed with an alert. "The show's starting," I texted Victor. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji as I accessed the live feed on my security system. On screen, Lillian had entered the house with an unfamiliar man in tow. They headed straight to the home office, where the man powered on my computer. The two exchanged minimal conversation as he worked to bypass my password, eventually inserting a flash drive and performing a series of suspicious activities for about 10 minutes. The surveillance cameras captured crystal-clear images of his face. Meanwhile, Lillian packed her belongings into garbage bags, likely because her suitcases were still in the master bedroom closet. Once the man finished his task, he shut down the computer and said something to Lillian before leaving. She completed her packing and exited the house at 3:56 p.m. Shortly after the recording ended, Victor called me. "All right, Ethan, go home and act as normal as possible. My guess is they'll try to involve the police either tonight or tomorrow. Be ready for a visit from an inspector. Warrants take a few hours, so it'll likely be tomorrow." "Is there a chance I'll be arrested?" I asked nervously. "There's always a possibility," Victor admitted. "If it happens, stay silent. Don't answer any questions. I've already contacted Stephen Parker, a top-notch criminal defense lawyer. He has all the relevant information, including your recordings. He says this will be the easiest case he's ever handled." Before we hung up, I gave Victor access codes for the alarm system and surveillance recordings just in case. The drive home was tense, my anxiety climbing with each mile. The evening passed uneventfully, no police visits, no calls from Lillian, and no taunting messages from Reed. I made myself a sandwich, watched some TV, and resisted the urge to tell my parents about the situation. They wouldn't understand the complexities of tampering with computer systems or cloud-stored evidence, and I didn't want to worry them unnecessarily. The following day, while I was at the store, another security alert popped up. Someone had entered my house. I texted Victor immediately and accessed the surveillance system. This time, the intruders were the police. They were trying to deactivate the alarm. Within minutes, the system went offline, indicating they'd succeeded. Victor texted me, confirming he'd seen the activity and had forwarded the images to Stephen Parker. An hour later, two officers arrived at my shop. Without much fanfare, they handcuffed me, read me my rights, and placed me in the back of a squad car. They began asking questions, but I followed Victor's advice and stayed silent. At the station, they confiscated my phone and wallet before putting me in a cell with 4 other detainees. The atmosphere was subdued. No one spoke, and everyone seemed more interested in the 4 tiles than in each other. After about 3 hours, a guard escorted me to a meeting room. "What the hell?" I asked, confused. I didn't request to see my lawyer yet. The guard remained silent, leaving me alone in the room. 10 minutes later, Nathan Reed walked in, his smug grin stretching as wide as the Golden Gate Bridge. He took a seat across from me, his silence speaking volumes as he tried to assert dominance. I met his gaze without a word, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. "So, do you understand the gravity of your situation now?" he finally asked. I stayed silent. "I asked you a question, Walker. Answer me, you insignificant little bud," he snapped. Still, I refused to speak. "It's your word against mine," Reed continued, leaning back in his chair. "A carpenter versus one of the most prominent lawyers in this city. Who do you think the court will believe?" His smirk never faltered. "Well, it seems like you need some time to think this over," he said, standing up. "Maybe a night back in your cell will help clarify things. Let's continue this chat tomorrow morning, shall we?" He left, and I was escorted back to the holding cell, now slightly less crowded. Later that afternoon, I was summoned again to the meeting room. This time, a tall blond man with a stern, no-nonsense demeanor awaited me. He looked like he meant business. As I entered the room, the tall blond man rose to greet me. "Good afternoon, Ethan. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Jonathan Lindsay. Please just call me Jonathan. Victor reached out earlier today, but he couldn't get through to you. Given the situation, we suspected you might have been arrested and brought here." Jonathan's demeanor was calm but professional, which helped ease my tension. I recounted the events of the afternoon, including the unsettling visit from Nathan Reed. Jonathan's jaw tightened as he listened, though he remained composed. "All right," he said when I finished. "You'll appear before a judge tomorrow morning. Expect a hefty bail amount, but don't worry, Victor will handle it. I know spending a night here won't be easy, but stay strong. Victor and I are both in your corner. In the meantime, continue refusing to answer any questions. I've officially taken on your case, and I'll make sure Reed doesn't get away with this." The next day, I stood before a judge, maintaining my plea of not guilty to the absurd charge of possessing illegal materials. Bail was set at $25,000, and I was released later that afternoon. While I was prohibited from leaving the city or contacting Lillian, Reed, or anyone from their firm, I was at least allowed to return to my shop and resume work. The police returned my phone and wallet, and Jonathan took me out for a late lunch to discuss the case in greater detail. "I kept things vague at the station," Jonathan explained, "but after doing some digging, I've uncovered quite a bit about Nathan Reed. Let me reassure you about a few things. First, the timeline is fishy. They brought you in before they even completed the search of your house, which is irregular. Second, the fact that Reed was allowed to visit you despite restrictions on your communications suggests serious misconduct. This whole situation reeks of orchestration, and that's illegal. But what about Reed's influence over judges?" I asked, still wary. Jonathan's expression softened into a knowing smile. "He has friends, sure, but not all of them. You can't make that many allies without creating a few enemies along the way. Trust me, we'll find a way around his connections." I sighed. I have no idea what's waiting for me at home. I just hope Lillian and her conniving partner didn't clean me out. "Don't worry about that," Jonathan reassured me. "Victor went to your house as soon as the police left, rearmed your system, and set it to record again. Nobody's been there since." After retrieving my car from the shop, I headed home for a much-needed shower. On the way, I received a message from my architect confirming client approval of the updated plans. A small but welcome relief. When I arrived home, the place was a disaster. Every room had been searched. The computer, of course, was the centerpiece of their supposed investigation, but I knew they wouldn't find anything incriminating. As I cleaned up the mess, I finally broke down, shedding tears for the first time. Just a week ago, I was a man content in what I thought was a solid marriage. Now, I was a suspect in a fabricated crime, facing divorce, and targeted by my wife's manipulative boss. How had it all unraveled so quickly? At least the media hadn't picked up the story. It seemed they were preoccupied with a brewing scandal over a multi-billion-dollar hole in public finances, sparing me from their scrutiny. Later that week, Jonathan called with good news. "Ethan, all charges against you have been dropped. The inspector assigned to your case is known for being tough, especially on matters of blackmail. Unswayed by Reed's influence, he's filed charges against Nathan Reed for blackmail, evidence tampering, and possession of illegal materials. Lillian is also being charged with conspiracy in these crimes. I let out a deep breath. Finally, a small measure of justice. Shortly after Jonathan's call, Victor reached out, inviting me to dinner that evening. On the way to Victor's, my family law attorney, Sylvia Grant, called. "Ethan," she began, "I have some news. Lillian's lawyer contacted me this afternoon. She's ready to sign the divorce papers without requesting any changes. However, she has one condition. She wants a private, one-hour meeting with you. She suggested it take place in my office." The idea of seeing Lillian again made my stomach turn, but I reasoned it could expedite the process. "Let's do it," I told Sylvia. "I want this over with as quickly as possible." That evening with Victor and Sophia was the first time in weeks I felt any sense of peace. Sophia had prepared a delicious meal of coconut shrimp and rice, and their company provided a welcome escape from the chaos. By the time I returned home, I felt grounded again. The meeting with Lillian was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Despite knowing I had done nothing wrong and being the victim of their twisted plot, I couldn't shake the nervous energy building inside me. When the day arrived, I was directed to Sylvia's office. She greeted me with a calm but cautious demeanor. "Ethan," she said, "I don't know what Lillian intends to discuss, but I need to remind you. There is still criminal charges pending against her. Be careful. Be cautious, Ethan," Sylvia advised. "Don't give her any ammunition. Avoid saying anything that could be twisted and used against you later. We can't search her for recording devices, so assume she might be recording the conversation. Keep that in mind." "Thanks for the heads up," I replied, steeling myself for what was to come. I was escorted to a small private meeting room where Lillian was already seated. I braced myself for the venomous and arrogant demeanor she displayed in the past weeks. But what I found was a very different woman, a shadow of her former self. She looked utterly broken. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of sympathy, but memories of her shameless behavior with Reed quickly erased it. "Thank you for agreeing to meet, Ethan," she began, her voice trembling. "What could you possibly have to say to me, Lillian?" I asked, my tone cold. "After everything you've done?" Her eyes welled up with tears. "Ethan, I'm so ashamed of myself and my actions toward you. You're an incredible husband who deserved none of this." Her voice cracked. "I let Nathan Reed manipulate me completely. When I heard the charges against you were dropped and realized I might face accusations myself, it jolted me out of his grip. I can barely look at myself in the mirror now. And all for what? A pitiful, meaningless affair." She broke down, crying openly. For the next half hour, she poured out her self-reflections, dissecting her behavior with a mix of regret and self-loathing. To my surprise, she didn't ask me for anything or try to pry information from me. "I understand it's over between us," she said eventually, wiping her face. "If I were in your shoes, I'd want a divorce too. I don't blame you for ending it. I've already resigned from my job and told Nathan Reed I never want to see or speak to him again. I've moved back to my parents' house and confessed everything to them. Let's just say they're not thrilled with me. The atmosphere there is unbearable." I remained silent, staring at her. What could I say? She had brought all this upon herself, and now she had to live with the consequences. "The next months, years maybe, are going to be difficult for me," she continued. "I don't know what the future holds, but I hope that someday, after everything is settled, we might be able to be friends." "That's a very distant possibility, Lillian. Very distant," I replied, standing to leave. "Best of luck." As I exited the room, a faint part of me still cared for her. But any thoughts of reconciliation were out of the question. The circumstances had already punished her more than I ever could. Revenge felt unnecessary. Life had taught her a lesson she'd never forget. Lillian ultimately cooperated with authorities, securing a plea deal by providing evidence against Reed. She relocated to another city, and we lost contact. Meanwhile, Reed's misdeeds became public. 2 other individuals came forward with blackmail complaints, bolstering the case against him. With overwhelming evidence, including recordings of his threats, Reed was convicted and sentenced to 12 years in prison. I didn't even have to testify. After his conviction, I filed a civil suit against Reed and what remained of his firm, ultimately winning a $2 million settlement. A large portion went to Victor, a token of gratitude for his steadfast support. Though Victor protested at first, I insisted he accept it. His help had been invaluable. Life slowly began to improve. My business flourished, and I was in the process of acquiring a specialty door manufacturer. The new team of 6 employees felt like an extension of my family. Not long after my divorce was finalized, Victor and Sophia invited me to a barbecue. It was there that I met Sophia's younger sister, Grace. We hit it off immediately, and after a few weeks of dating, I began to feel hopeful about the future. Weeks later, with a civil case behind me, I decided to visit Reed in prison. I instructed the guard to ensure Reed remained in the room for our chat. When he entered and saw me, his face contorted with anger. "What do you want, Cook?" he spat at having to leave. The guard blocked his path, forcing him to sit. Smirking, I leaned back in my chair. "I just thought I'd check in. Heard your wife, Olivia, file for divorce. Maybe I'll take her out for dinner sometime, show her a good night." "You bastard," Reed growled, rising from his seat. "Don't waste your breath." I cut him off, grinning. "I've already done that. By the way, the hummingbird tattoo on her upper thigh is quite charming, isn't it?" Reed's face turned crimson, his fury rendering him momentarily speechless. As he opened his mouth to spew more threats, he stopped, realizing there was nothing he could say to regain the upper hand. "Relax, Reed. I didn't come here to talk about Olivia," I said, leaning forward. "I came to remind you that you're a fool, a spectacularly arrogant fool. Showing up at someone's house and outlining your plans for blackmail? That's not just stupidity, Reed. It's amateur hour. Even a simple carpenter could outmaneuver you." Reed clenched his fists, trembling with rage as I burst into laughter. "And weren't you the one who claimed that possessing certain materials was illegal for a man like me, but perfectly fine for someone as powerful as you?" I taunted. "Look at you now. That orange jumpsuit really brings out your grandeur." Reed looked like he was on the verge of a breakdown, but I wasn't finished. "Before I go, I have something Olivia and Lillian thought you'd find enlightening." I slid a folded piece of paper across the table. "What the hell is this?" he snapped, unfolding it. I pointed at the crude drawing on the page. "That, Reed, is a diagram of female anatomy, specifically a part that men often overlook. You see, they thought it was about time someone educated you on its location." Reed's face darkened to a deep beet red as I stood and walked out, laughing all the way.